This is Woodrow Wilcox, and I am meeting for the first time Dr. Stephen E. Faser, the famous Dr. Stephen E. Faser, who wrote a letter to Senator Evan Bayh, and that letter has gone all over the country through the internet. Could you tell us how you came to apparently read the entire health care reform bill and then write the letter to Senator Bayh?
Sure. As a practicing physician, I do a lot of call, and I had a lot of call in July where I had some free time. So I spent the time going online to the Energy Commerce website and downloading the PDF form of H.R. 3200, which is the fancy name for the House Healthcare Bill. I read through that line by line. It took me about 30 hours, and I pulled out sections which I thought were interesting or perhaps problematic, and I mailed a copy to the senator as well as to my partners, encouraging them to research the bill for themselves. The letter was then sent by some of my partners to friends, and then it went all over the United States. So it was not my intention for this to become a nationwide letter, but I guess that's what it is now.
So you were not trying to become a nationwide spokesman. You were just trying to be a good citizen and inform your colleagues, inform yourself about this bill, and then inform your colleagues what you had found about the bill in order to be helpful to them.
That's correct.
Now, are you politically active? Have you campaigned for other people in the past, or what's your situation? People are going to ask, well,
Yes.
Who is this guy?
Well, I would say that I am definitely not a member of the vast right-wing conspiracy. I've never written an elected official in my life. I consider myself a good citizen. I vote, but I have never done anything like this before. But this is an issue. Healthcare reform is something I think needs to happen. Let me just say that at first. I think we do need to reform our system in the country. But I'm not convinced that H.R. 3200 is the best way to do that.
So you think that there are a lot of changes that should be made to H.R. 3200, the health care reform bill, and that there should be much more input from you and other people in the public to make those changes and make them good for all the people?
Well, I think that H.R. 3200 perhaps is not the best bill to present to the President for signature. I think there are many other smart, intelligent, reasonable people out there in Congress that have other proposals that deserve to be paid attention to.
So in other words, you're not against reform, you're just simply against this proposal for reform. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you went through the entire bill, and of course I report on things that are of interest to senior citizens. Could you go through the section of the letter that you sent to Senator Evan Bayh, which relates specifically to senior citizens and things that may be of concern to them?
Sure. One of the sections in the bill that I think a lot of senior citizens have heard about in the media is the Advanced Care Planning Consultation section, which is section 1233, pages 424 to 431 of the H.R. 3200. In this, I think the intent of the government was to encourage senior citizens to have an end-of-life discussion and to provide payment to physicians so that this could be done for all elderly patients, which is not a bad thing. I think everybody should have end-of-life plans. However, the way the language writes in the bill, the government will mandate, which is requirement, that this happen every 5 years. And they also state that if the patient's health deteriorates, the consultations should occur more frequently. Now, I'm not sure why that would be necessary. If you have an end-of-life plan and you're happy with it, why does it need to be reevaluated with every change in your health status? That brings up the question of, is the government wanting to change things or not? In my mind. Maybe other reasonable people will disagree. The advanced care consultation may include an order for end-of-life plans. This is not unusual. Most end-of-life plans include orders for what the patient wants to have happen. But in this bill, a physician or other provider, meaning a nurse or somebody else, can implement this plan.
Even somebody who's just simply a government officer?
It's not specific, but it does say doctors or other individuals. So I don't know what that means, and I think reasonable people can look at that and say, well, who's going to be involved here? To me, an end-of-life planning consultation is okay. Probably everybody should have one, but it's a decision, I think, that is best made between the patient, the family, and the physician. Having the government insert itself in any other way other than providing reimbursement for the service, I think brings up the question of meddling. And it's my understanding currently that this might be stricken from the bill, but we're not certain as to its final fate.
So that was a legitimate concern that you thought every senior citizen should be aware of, that somebody other than a doctor could actually sign something to order the end of a patient's life. Is that correct?
I think that's correct. Now, I don't think these are orders for ending life as far as euthanasia is concerned. I don't think that's what they're saying.
Okay.
But, and I don't want seniors to be terrified that the government is going to be out there to end their life. But they are inserting themselves into a minefield, I think, that they don't need to. I think that there are adequate avenues for planning for end of life without the government putting its foot in there. And that, again, the decision is best made between the patient, the family, and the physician.
Dr. Faser, there are a lot of different websites or allegations of what your letter states. Are you pleased with the way I presented your letter on MedicareProblems.net? I would point out that I only introduced it and then didn't change a thing in it.
I think it's nice to have an unaltered version up there on the internet. I personally do not have a website, so it's nice to have a complete copy there. Again, I would encourage anybody that reads this letter to look at it and use it as the basis for researching legislation on their own. In my letter, there's a link to the original source that I used.
Right, and that's in what I put on the internet.
And there also is a link at the end for another article which I found to be interesting. Seniors, one of the things I'm concerned as a physician about seniors is that the current system, Medicare, is $38 trillion in debt. There are going to be mounting pressures on the Medicare program in the future. Right now, this liability is not being addressed by Congress. In fact, to help pay for the House's health care reform bill, some have suggested taking up to $500 billion a year from the current Medicare program, which is already in debt, and transferring that into the new health care bill. Politicians now are saying that Medicare benefits will not change, but given the realities of the fiscal environment in our government over time, I think it's reasonable for people to ask themselves, are my benefits going to change?
In other words, how can you take all that money away from Medicare and put it into something else and say that Medicare benefits won't be reduced? That's your question, is that correct?
That's a question I have, and I think it's a reasonable one. The government has not addressed how to take care of the funding shortfalls for Medicare or Social Security, which is, some say, over $60 trillion in debt. Medicare is paid for by taxes, and I suppose if the government will have to raise taxes massively to cover the baby boom generation as it retires.
Thank you very much for your time, Dr. Faser.
Okay, thank you.